we're coming close to the end of 2024. And, pretty much every year I've been making some sort of change to crowdsource the truth around the new year. Frequently, it's a technological advance that allows me to do something slightly different that maybe makes the show more interesting. Gives me some new capability that perhaps other people might not try out. I've always been fascinated throughout my career with exploring technological challenges that allow me to photograph and broadcast and record things in ways that are perhaps really difficult to do, not simply to challenge myself, but to allow me to do things that perhaps people haven't seen before. Now, I know everybody has seen me in the car for the past 2 weeks. I've been traveling around and visiting family, obviously, for the holidays. There's going to be more travel coming up, but I've actually been testing a lot of technology that one major piece is being used right now, and I don't want to say too much about it until we complete this broadcast, because I really won't know if it works or not until it's done. And I'll be talking more about it in the future, but this show today is not going to be about the technology that I'm using. It's going to be about drones and counter drones, UAS, unpiloted aerial systems, traditionally known as unmanned aerial systems, but of course that's sexist, so we got to, unpiloted. A lot of people have been talking about the drones in New Jersey, Ohio, and all over the place. I still want to talk about the drones that I believe were in use in Butler, PA. We're actually going to be introducing multiple technologies in today's show. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an interactive artificial intelligence image analysis of some of the videos that eyewitnesses and police recorded at the Butler, PA Farm Show Fairgrounds during the Donald Trump assassination attempt last July. I know everybody realizes that I've been speaking about that a lot. It seems like a lot of people have turned their attention away from that, so I want to make sure we stay focused and don't lose sight of some of the important details. So in just about 30 minutes, I'm going to be starting a sponsor-exclusive show that people will be able to watch on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I should also mention that people can now also subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth on X. So if you are following on X, you can get over there at JG_CSTT. And if you subscribe on X, you will also get the sponsor exclusive videos. I want to thank the 6 people who have already subscribed. A lot of people saw the show I did yesterday with Ken Silva about the Allegheny County medical examiner. But today, I want to take us back to a pretty sinister character, a guy I don't like very much. I don't trust him. And we're going to be looking into Palmer Luckey and some of his claims around counter UAS technology. Actually, it's counter claims. I'm the one who's claimed that it seems, and I haven't proven this yet, we're just looking at evidence and speculating a bit, but there is evidence that causes me to believe that counter UAS technology was in use, and that might have been Anduril technology. If people have just recently started following Crowdsource the Truth, you may not recall that I had this phone call with a guy named Rafael Eduardo Castro. Let's listen to this for just a moment.
Eduardo, is that you? Can you hear me? Is that Eduardo?
Who's speaking?
It's Jason. How are you, man?
I'm sorry, it's who?
It's Jason. I wanted to ask you about the drone you were flying in Butler, Pennsylvania. Was it an Anduril counter UAS drone? And why has your name been hidden?
Oh, I'm sorry, who do you work for?
I don't work for anybody. This is Jason. I work for myself. You are the drone operator, the counter UAS drone operator, right? Is this Special Agent Eduardo Castro?
Who do you work for? And how did you get this number?
Eduardo Castro? I don't work for anyone. I have a show called Crowdsource the Truth. You were the drone operator during the Donald Trump assassination attempt, right? What was the function of the drone you were flying?
Sir, there's a government phone number for official business only. Do not call this number again.
Pretty authoritatively told me to F.O. But that was a really interesting phone call in my estimation. He didn't say, what are you talking about? I wasn't in... Oh, lost a light there. He didn't say I wasn't in Butler, PA. So that was pretty interesting. And he did not explain what was going on. Now, this guy, Rafael Eduardo Castro, he has already testified before one of these House panels. I don't want to go into too many details about him right now because we've looked into him before. There is one thing I just wanted to remind people about. I found his information because I had filed a right to know action against the Butler County ESU, and they had delivered to me an unredacted version of the after-action report that had been given to Chuck Grassley. And from that report, I got Rafael Eduardo Castro's name, and his LinkedIn told us that he worked for something called Mission Support and Test Services. Now, it was that thing, Mission Support and Test Services. That is a really interesting LLC that is, so here, let's take a look at this because this is interesting stuff. So Mission Support and Test Services is this LLC in Las Vegas, Nevada. And if we go, it's located in, it says, the U.S. Commerce Department. This is the thing that's so weird about it. It's kind of hard to tell if it's a private company or a U.S. government agency or what. But let's just take a look at the website here really quickly. Somewhere in the partnerships or in the news here, we found that these guys were testing all kinds of Anduril technology. Now, that phone call that I placed to Rafael Eduardo Castro, I wasn't even that familiar with Anduril. I mistakenly called it Anduvil. People might have heard me say that. I apologize to the Anduril executives who might be annoyed by that, but let's just look this up. If we go Mission Support and Test Services Anduril, this is how I first heard of Anduril. I didn't know anything about it. It's a company that supports the Department of Energy and National Nuclear Security Administration with a variety of activities. And we found, private defense company testing leading edge technology. So this was the article that originally, I never heard of Anduril before I saw this. And so just from Googling around after I found Rafael Eduardo Castro's name, we found this. And it says private defense company to test leading edge technologies at the NNSS, the National, whatever that was, Nuclear Security Site. And right in here, it's telling us the partnership between the NNSS and Anduril is one of many upcoming collaborations with private companies actively engaged in today and tomorrow's National Security Week. So, there's a bunch of different stuff. Operating at NNSS will allow Anduril to test a wider variety of capabilities owing to its more permissive airspace restrictions. So it seemed to me that there was like a whole lot of Anduril technology being tested by this thing. This is an Anduril Ghost drone in flight. And obviously, September 10th, 2022, 2 years ago, it's kind of a world away in the world of, technology and drone technology, UAS technology. So we don't really know what's been developed since then. We did see this Anduril Anvil drone, which was an interesting thing. There's all kinds of technology that Anduril has released. We've got this Counter UAS system. I think I've shown this before. Let's just give a listen. Of technology. technologies that they use for Counter UAS. Counter UAS just means any technology. You see there it says Anduril Lattice Counter Drone System. They've got a Sentry Tower with long-range radar and MWIR. I don't really know what that is, multi-wave infrared. I don't know. It's got all kinds of different sensors. Lattice is an operating system, a battlefield operating system that basically allows all of these different devices to interact and intercommunicate. Just like the iPhone has the iOS operating system on it, you can go buy a Bluetooth headset from one company and maybe a video game controller or some other accessory from another company. All of these things interface with the phone, the hardware of the phone, through an operating system. And this is really the revolutionary aspect of what Anduril is doing. I'm not sure that any other company has ever had this type of battlefield operating system before. So I'm not trying to disparage Anduril. I'm just noting that this is a technology company that that guy, Rafael Eduardo Castro, works with. For all we know, we might even be looking at that mission support services thing. This Anvil drone, it conducts its Counter UAS technology through kinetic, smashing the thing like this. So it's very fast. It's one of the fastest UAVs that you can buy. It goes something like 200 miles an hour or perhaps even more, and it just smashes an enemy aircraft. Now, I'm not saying that that was the technology that would have been used in Butler, PA, but it does seem that there was some Counter UAS technology because there was testimony about that. If we even say Counter UAS, Donald Trump assassination attempt. Let's see what that gives us. It seems like we might. Task force recommends a change. Yeah, see, this is the thing. These task forces have all been recommending changes. Counter snipers and the House Task Force releases a final report. Yeah, in that final report, they had, oh, look at this. Lawfare. Whoa. I didn't know that Lawfare was talking about this. Isn't that so interesting? People might remember my encounter with Ben Wittes outside the Donald Trump trial in New York City. But this is talking, well, we're going to dig into this later, but the point is they did cross-examine Rafael Eduardo Castro. We've spoken about that with some other guests, and people can read that. The local snipers employed Butler County law enforcement, employed by local law enforcement. They claim that they understood the crowd to be their primary responsibility. Again, service here. And there are a lot of people talking about this idea of, counter UAS technologies, denied resources, including counter unmanned aircraft systems. And unmanned aircraft. There's a lot of call right now for more of these counter unmanned aircraft systems. Again, when I hear Washington, D.C. bureaucrats and criminally engaged nonprofits talking about the need for counter UAS systems, it sounds like they're gearing up to try to get more money out of Congress. And it's interesting, Palmer Luckey, he got very upset when I started talking about this. It was surprising to most people that a billionaire would care at all what I have to say, but we know that Palmer Luckey was all over it. People who have been following have seen him get super duper angry. But the thing that I want to focus on today is actually analyzing some of the images that we believe are drones. This is one of the primary ones here, and actually Palmer Luckey freaked out about this. So here, I was comparing the image that was captured by Todd the Driller. He's just a guy who was there at the rally, and he took video on an iPhone. He told me which one it was. It was an unremarkable, maybe like an iPhone 12, kind of phone that almost anybody would have. And he didn't have it set to 4K. He didn't have it set to 120 frames per second. I had a little phone conversation with him about some of those capabilities of the phone, and he was interested in that and changed some of the settings. I think the idea being in the future, he might want to record at higher resolution. But he was just pointing his phone towards the building, and we had this item sort of fly by. Now, this is an image that I took from a different video of an Anduril Anvil drone, and my question at the time was, is this what we're looking at here? It's hard to say. Of course, Palmer Luckey said, no, it definitely is not. Let's see if he's in these comments anywhere. We could search around for Palmer Luckey. There's plenty of negative things that he had to say about me and my evaluation of this as a possible Anduril drone. He says it's not. He's used many disparaging terms to describe me, but we don't need to go into that right now. The thing that I wanted to share with people, here we go. Here's a video of it moving. Let's just take a look at that. So I created this video where it's shown in real time and then also slowed down. You can see that I've put a circle around this thing and blown it up. It was amazing to me that the phone captured so much detail. Palmer Luckey and other people would have us believe that this is an insect, and that's possible. It seems odd to me that an insect would move at this speed and that its wings would still be resolved by an iPhone. Again, it's possible that it could be. I'm not an insect expert. I'm not even an expert at photographing insects. That's a highly specialized area of cinematography and photography. But I have photographed lots and lots of stuff, and I know a lot about how cameras work and everything. And it just seems pretty surprising to me that we would capture an insect like this. So what we're going to do when I get over to the sponsor exclusive segment here, we're going to take a look at a bit of image analysis that I did with a recent update to OpenAI ChatGPT. It has this multimodal mode where you can load in images, and it does all kinds of detailed analysis. So just to give people an idea of what that's going to be like, we're going to start just looking at a conversation I had with ChatGPT the other day. And then when we're in the sponsor exclusive segment, I'm actually going to live in real time query ChatGPT with some new images. I don't even know what the outcome is going to be. It could say, nope, Jason, that's an insect, and we'll see what the outcome is. But this conversation with ChatGPT started the other day, maybe yesterday or the day before. I just asked it, is it plausible to presume that an iPhone shooting at 30 frames per second could capture the flapping of wings of a flying insect? And ChatGPT says, yes, it is plausible for an iPhone shooting at 30 frames per second to capture the flapping of an insect's wings, but the clarity and detail depend on the insect's wing beat frequency and the motion blur present in the footage. Now, this is kind of an important thing. We knew that, but there are a lot of parameters here. Motion blur, as recorded by a digital image, is determined by a number of things. Firstly, the speed of the object, and secondarily, the speed of the camera's shutter. In addition to the frame rate, which is the number of pictures the camera takes in a given second, normally that's 30 in the United States of America. High-speed photography is going to be done at higher frame rates, 120, 240. Idea being, when you play it back at normal speed, the thing that is photographed at high speed will be slowed down. Again, Todd the Driller did not have his phone set to any of the high-speed settings, depending on which iPhone you have. I do believe they can shoot up to 240 frames. Yeah, no, I've shot it at 240 frames per second, I think is the maximum for an iPhone right now. And it's important for people to understand that even just 10 or 15 years ago, that was a very difficult thing to do with a digital camera. It required a specialized camera, normally a specialized crew. We used to do phantom shoots. Now, those went up to like 1,000 frames per second, even 10,000 frames per second and higher. But that required a whole entire cart with computer equipment and high-speed connections to the camera to be able to record that much information. So I hope that people can appreciate how complex doing something like this actually is. But according to ChatGPT, it says, yes, it's plausible. So and by the way, when you're outdoors on a sunny day, the shutter speed of your iPhone, it's going to be very quick, because it's one of the things that the iPhone uses to give you proper exposure. By having a very rapid shutter, you're exposing the sensor to light for less time. And let me just explain for a second. So we're talking about 30 frames per second. And within that 1/30th of a second duration of one frame, the photography time for one frame, the camera shutter could be open the whole entire time, 1/30th of a second. That would give a lot of motion blur on a fast-moving object. It could be open for half the duration of the frame rate, which is normal. That's going to be considered normal, and that would give you normal-looking motion blur. People walking and talking have very slight motion blur, but this tends to give us a sense of natural-looking motion. A lot of people maybe have observed that, okay, so we've had our first issue there. A lot of people have observed that perhaps on a new TV, you have these motion settings that can sometimes make movies look like soap operas or sporting events and change the characteristics of the motion in ways that some people might like, some people might not. But that is doing digital things to affect the frame rate. I got distracted by that technical issue. But again, if it's very bright out, your iPhone will automatically reduce the exposure time by increasing the shutter speed. So 1/30th of a second is much more time for the shutter to be open than 1/100th of a second. That's a quick shutter speed. And in that event, you would have less motion blur. So ChatGPT is just telling us that it's possible, but the clarity and detail depend on the wing beat frequency, how quickly the insect's wings are flapping within a given second, and the motion blur caused by that. So it tells us that wing beat frequencies of bees are around 200 hertz, 200 flaps per second. Houseflies, all that. Butterflies are very, very slow. So at 30 frames per second, if an insect's wings flap faster than the frame rate, the individual wing beats may not be clearly resolved. That's the other thing to keep in mind, is that there's all kinds of strange things that can happen if the frequency of the flapping of the wings coincides closely to the shutter speed of your camera. For instance, you can, let's get back to, there we go. So if this is, I don't know, does that look like a butterfly to people? Does that look like even a dragonfly to people? It looks like more like a housefly, or just a horsefly, somebody had mentioned that it might be. So houseflies are 200 hertz. That's pretty fast. That would give us a lot of motion blur. Fast-moving objects with slow shutter speeds give us a lot of motion blur. So I don't know. Again, this is not necessarily conclusive. This is going to be an exploration of all this different information. I'm going to continue reading what ChatGPT told me to give people a little bit more of an idea of what we're talking about here. The frame rate, 30 frames per second, captures an image every 33.3 milliseconds. If the wings complete multiple flaps within that time, their movement might appear as a blurred or stroboscopic effect, depending on the synchronization between the frame rate and the wing beat frequency. Motion blur is reduced with a fast shutter speed. In well-lit environments, the iPhone can use a fast shutter speed, which might capture sharper details in the wings. I agree with that completely, and I think that's the reason why we're seeing anything at all here. But it definitely looks like a very fast flapping rate, and there's other characteristics of insects. These wings, they appear to be in very similar position. That's sort of the stroboscopic effect that it was talking about there. It's very difficult to say what this is. I just think that there's a lot of definition in the wings here, and insect wings are very, very thin and nearly transparent. I think a horsefly, it's hard for me to believe that that would be an insect, but ChatGPT tells us that if the insect's wing beats align in some ways with the frame rate or multiples of it, a stroboscopic effect might make the wings appear stationary or moving in slow motion. That could be what we're observing there. That could be why they appear to be in nearly the same position. Slower winged insects like butterflies or dragonflies are easier to capture distinctly at 30 frames per second. Not horseflies, though, I don't think. And the body of what we see flying by there doesn't look like a dragonfly to me. It's also talking about iPhone's abilities to record at 120 and 240 frames per second, but the conclusion is an iPhone at 30 frames per second can capture the movement of insect wings, but the result will likely show motion blur or a stroboscopic effect. So I tell it that a video that I think is an image of a drone, because the wings appear to be virtually in the same position in each frame, could be anything. Palmer Luckey, CEO, should say Anduril, but there's a typo there, whose drone I think it is, claims it's an insect, and it just seems unlikely to me that the detail and clarity of an iPhone capturing an insect so small in the frame would be able to resolve the wings and that they'd be in virtually the same position over the course of 6 frames. So I'm going to take a break from this introduction right here, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes. People are going to be able to join me for this sponsor exclusive segment on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Don't forget, you can also sponsor the show on x.com. Go to @JG_CSTT, become a subscriber, and you'll be able to watch this sponsor exclusive video. We're going to take a look at some more of what ChatGPT had to say about the video that's already been analyzed, and I'll go through the analysis. There's a lot of very, very detailed analysis that it gets to, actually. Let's see, where did I have all that? It gets to some really amazing images and things that we had of, right when we got into object and image analysis of drone wings. And remember, there are wing drones and propeller drones. The first thing that ChatGPT was telling me was that it was talking about propellers. And just to give people an idea for exactly how I conducted this research, I captured individual still frames from that video that I showed earlier. And you can upload, this is this multimodal stuff in ChatGPT that I was talking about. You can actually upload images to ChatGPT, and then it'll do an image analysis. So we can see here that it's created its own little image sequence, and it goes to some pretty advanced analysis that we'll get into. It looks at the contrast and the motion blur. It gets to some of those charts that I used in the thumbnail, get into centroid tracking across frames. This is interesting stuff that, again, I didn't really have the ability to just analyze this off the top of my head, but we can see, organic things like insects tend to not create charts that give us straight lines like this, but perhaps this is too small of a sample to know. I don't know. This is, again, information that I'm putting out for people to be able to evaluate, criticize, provide their input, their commentary. Tell me what you think. But whatever the outcome of this research is, please become a sponsor of Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or finally, become a subscriber on X at JG_CSTT. I really appreciate everyone who is sponsoring the show and who has done for the past 8 years. I wouldn't be here doing all this stuff without you. So thanks very much, everyone.